Okay, picture this. It's Friday night in the 80s, mid-90s, and you're just getting home from school. What are you gonna do for the weekend? Well, head to the video store and rent a movie or a video game. It was definitely an awesome occasion anytime you headed to the video game store. So in this Top 3 Tuesday, we're going to be breaking down video rental stores and the memories that come with them. Top 3 Tuesday, what will it be? Sit back, relax, and listen to me. It's Countdown Show. 1, 2, 3. It's Top 3 Tuesday, best day of the week. Well, I certainly visited a ton of video rental stores back in the day. Growing up, my parents divorced when I was young, so on the weekends, I would head to my dad's for the weekend, and it was almost tradition. On Friday, we would head to the video rental store to rent a movie for the weekend while I was there, or a video game. So, coming in at number 3... Number 3! It's just going to be any mom and pop video rental store, the ones that aren't a big chain you would see in these little plazas in small towns. It was just something about going into the video store and seeing what they had on display, the small video game section that they had when I was going. It was mostly Nintendo games, so my dad would go to the movies to check out the movies he was going to get for the weekend, and of course I got to rent a video game. And you know, you're looking at the back of the box, you're like, oh man, Batman, is this going to be good? And it's only got 2 screenshots to go off of, so hopefully it was a good game. But then on the flip side of it, Simon's Quest, I remember renting this one quite a bit, and on the back of the box, plenty of screenshots of the game. So you could see him with the whip, whipping some werewolves, and a whole bunch of adventure going on, and this was definitely a perfect game for rentals because it had a password system. This way you could rent it one weekend, and then if you didn't finish the game, you could come back the following weekend, put that password in, and start up where you left off. Something like that you couldn't do with other games. Much like here with Zelda, if you rented Zelda for the weekend, it used the battery for saving. So you could save your game, but chances are someone else is going to rent this game and erase your save. But on the flip side, when you rented it next weekend, you could always start on their save, and maybe they're further ahead in the game than you were. So I guess there's ups and downs. But that was just the fun of it, renting from these small stores. You know, you can see what kind of games been hanging around there, and oftentimes they would have them for sale if people maybe weren't renting them that much. A lot of times, actually, I ended up renting games from the supermarket. I went to Stop and Shop, and they had a rental little place up front that you can rent games and movies from. So I'm not sure if any other supermarkets had rental places, but that was definitely common in my area. And moving on to bigger name stores on the list here, I'm not sure if this chain extends from Connecticut or not, but coming in at number 2. Number 2 is Tommy K's Video. Now, they had quite a few stores here in Connecticut. They have since closed down, and they turned over to Tommy's Tanning. So you can go get your tan on for the winter, so you have a nice even tan, I guess. But you would see some of the plazas have a Tommy K's rental and the tanning place towards the end, and then the video store, unfortunately, just went under. Now, Tommy K's, set up just like any other video rental store. They had the new selections that came in, and then everything broken down: horror, action, kids. Video games, I don't remember too much at Tommy K's. I'm trying to think when I went renting there. I think it was more for movies. And well, before we get to the number 1 on my list, I want to hear from a few other people of their video memories. So take it away.
Video game rental places that no longer exist, I would have to go with Nap Video. Nap Video is a very long defunct rental store, and I know they had VHSs and video games as well. And I used to love going there with my family every weekend, and my siblings and I would, we would each pick a game that we all knew that we would play. Except my sister, she didn't really play games all that much, so she would always go and look for like Disney movies or whatever. We would go there every weekend, like right after school. We would just go there, and it's a good memory to have. Just spending time with my siblings at a rental store, and picking a game that we knew we'd all play together. And of course, we had to buy snacks as well. That's always a good time. Which would explain why I'm so fat now. But hey, whatever. Yeah, there was also other places that had rental areas. Like the Stop and Shop used to have like their own little rental corner where you can rent DVDs, VHS, video games, whatever. I would go there with my parents all the time. Every time they'd go food shopping, I'm like, okay, I want to go, and I'll just spend my entire time in this little corner of the store just looking at video games. That was fun for me, I guess. I don't know, I'm weird. And also we had this drugstore that had like a little section of video games to rent as well. So we were like members of all these different places because if one store didn't have a game that you're looking for, you just go to another one, and then if they don't have it, you go to the other one, and hopefully they'll have it. So most of the time that worked. A lot of times it didn't, but whatever. It was still fun. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go with that video. Unfortunately, I don't have any information. I tried Googling this place, and it's kind of like non-existent. Like there's no information on this franchise or whatever. So that kind of sucks. But yeah, that video was a cool place.
What's up guys, Sean from the Nerd Lair here. Video rental stores for me growing up were a huge thing because I lived in a very small town called Gold Bar. It's a quaint little mountain town, very Tolkien-esque I would say. As you could probably guess, there wasn't a whole lot of stuff to do in this mountain town, especially for someone like me who was really into video games. But there was one salvation that the town had. It was Harry's Video Store. Obviously, it's not a video store anymore. The property was actually bought by a third party, and someone built like an espresso coffee place next to the actual building, which was Harry's Video Store. With a mom and pop video store like this in such a small town, you really felt like you were someone special every time you went in. And since the town was so small, everyone knew everyone, especially Harry, because everyone would go there to get their movies or video games. He knew us growing up from, a young age to, mid-teens. You could rent movies, you could rent video games, you could even rent video game consoles, and I believe he had some VHS camcorders you could rent as well. And I would always remember, going in there sometimes and a new game would come out and I just wouldn't have, money to rent it at the time because, I was a kid, I didn't have a job. So sometimes Harry would let it slide. He would just let us rent it for free because, he knew who we were. Or he would just put it on a tab and bill my parents later. Harry eventually passed away and he handed it down to, I think, his son. Once streaming services hit and like Redbox, where you could, rent DVDs from like a kiosk at like a convenience store, the video store went under, obviously. I don't know, there was something about video rental stores that may not make sense to a lot of younger kids nowadays. Like, why was it so cool going to a video store? I have I have Netflix. I can watch it, instantly whenever I want from my bed. And it was kind of something you just had to be there when it was a thing to fully understand what was so awesome about it. But alas, we are in the future now and video stores are long gone and they're never coming back. Never. Never. But I'll always have those awesome memories and that nostalgia, which is purely what fuels my life force now. Alright, that's all the time I have for this segment. If you guys want to check out my channel, link is down below in the video description. Thank you, Russ, for having me on. Back to you.
Oh wow, Sean, Harry sounds like an awesome place. And like you're saying, growing up in a small town, it's great that he knew everyone, so you felt so welcome going there. Well, we're going to take it back real retro with Papa Pete. He's got an awesome story for you guys.
Hey guys, Papa Pete here, and thanks a lot, Russ, for having me on today to talk about one of my favorite game rental places from when I was a kid. Now, I've been around for a long time, and I can remember before you ever could rent anything really like that. It was back in the day when movies started becoming prominent, and my brother-in-law, who I've talked about a lot because of the video games that he was right into that stuff back then, bought the very first VCR that I ever used back around 1980. And back at that time, they were about $600, and you couldn't even rent a movie anywhere in our town. You had to go 92 miles away to the city of Bangor, Maine to even rent a movie back in 1980. That, of course, evolved and evolved as VCRs became more and more popular. Within a year or two, it's kind of ironic, the very first rental place in our little town was the bus station, because the guy who ran the bus station used to have a little cabinet. He made a deal with the company, with the store that was in Bangor, Maine, to ship down 15, 20 movies, and he'd have them for 2 or 3 months, give everybody a chance to rent them all, and then he'd just exchange them with the store in Bangor. So that went on for 6, 8 months until it grew and grew and grew. And that was back in the era of the Intellivision and the Atari 2600, really, as well as the ColecoVision. And rentals weren't as popular with games then. It seemed that it wasn't until the NES community started being able to really rent games. Of course, movie rentals were everywhere. There were all kinds of mom and pop shops all around, long before the days of Movie Gallery, which I do miss from back in the 2000s, and Blockbuster. We all got to talk about Blockbuster. But I'm talking about the mom and pop shops from way back then. And every place had certain number of games, usually NES games. Every little store had something different. It was really, really interesting. So the one that I really missed the most, that I dealt with the most, was a place called Dave's Movie Center, which was by my other sister's house in Bangor, Maine, coincidentally. And at Dave's Movie Center, it was really well known as a really popular spot right in the heart of Bangor. There was an old house, 2 full stories with all kinds of movie rentals, movies everywhere, games everywhere. I used to go out, spend the weekends, weeks, and Christmas time, March breaks and stuff in the summer as well with my sister in Bangor, and I'd always be going off and renting games for the weekend, renting games 2 or 3 days. And matter of fact, from Dave's Movie Center, I still remember, is the first place I ever played a Vectrex when I went and rented one for a weekend. What an amazing system. I don't have one today. I know it's a lot of money to pick one up. But man, if you're ever going to pick up a system that's really, really unique and a lot of fun to play, it's the Vectrex. And the only one I ever played was a rental from Dave's Movie Center, and I really miss that place today. The ironic part is, though, it still exists. It's no longer Dave's Movie Center. They carried right through. Like I say, it was a mom and pop, individual, independent little store. It carried on and on and on, and they always had a section behind the curtain. But as things happened, as VHS turned to DVDs, and then DVDs turned to Blu-rays, and it went more to Netflix, and video rental places faded away. Video game rental places faded away as well. Now, it's called not only Dave's Movie Center, it's called Dave's Movie Center Romantic Supermarket. So you can just imagine the things they sell. Anyway, I miss them from back in the day. Thanks a lot for having me on to tell my little story, Russ. You guys all take care. See you soon.
I didn't even think of that. Taking it so far back, maybe some people didn't have VCRs because they cost $600-700. So you weren't able to rent movies. You had to get the VCR first. So you had to wait for technology to catch up to become more affordable to the consumer.
Thank you so much for having us, Russ. Video rental stores. I don't even know where to begin. The feeling, the nostalgia, it just takes me back. The 80s, 90s, early aughts. They seem so close, but so far away. Things have changed so much, so rapidly. What's one of your favorite of
One of
all
my
time?
favorite video rental stores is Family Video. I mostly rented movies, but one of my video game memories is renting Monsters, Inc. on the PS2. I've talked about this before on the channel, but I remember as a kid, Monsters, Inc., one of my favorite Pixar movies of all time. I loved that game on the PS2. I just recently got it, though, as an adult. Let me tell you, that game does not hold up. That game sucks, but I would spend hours walking through Family Video, renting movies, renting games. Dude, getting candy?
Yeah.
They had the candy display.
The big box candies?
Yes,
Yeah.
dude. Fridays and Saturday nights, I remember with my girlfriend in high school, we would go to Family Video. We'd rent a scary movie, get some box candy, watch it, and cuddle. It was awesome, dude. I loved it.
Cuddle. Didn't one of like your aunts or something? Because you've got a lot of games that have the video store ring that's in our collection.
Oh, one of my aunts used to work at Mr. Movies.
Oh,
which is
okay.
a local place, which I...
So you got a lot of those as like gifts
Yeah,
and
because
stuff.
she worked there, which was awesome.
Because you've got all these games that are actually in pretty good shape. Most of them, though, are missing the manuals. And I'm like, how did you get all these games from Mr. Movies?
It's because my aunt worked there.
Yeah, so it's pretty awesome. For me, I got to go something way obscure that no one who's going to see this video is ever going to know about. But in my hometown of Norwalk, Iowa, there was a video store that I put leaps and bounds over any video store I've ever been in, not just because of nostalgia, because of their quality. It was Town Talkie's Home Video.
Yep.
So we recently have reconnected with the son of the owner, because we're gonna maybe do like a little docu-shoot on this piece, I hope. But this place was unworldly. I wish, like, none other that I could take all of you watching to Town Talkies just one time. It almost like gets me emotional to talk about this place. So from the NES era, I remember going there. From the time I can remember from about the time I was 5. My dad and I were into the NES, we were into pro wrestling, and we were into sports cards. They had a card shop in the back.
That's so cool.
And they had such a vast offering of games, cards, and movies, and it wasn't like they only got them in infrequently. They always had the new releases. A pay-per-view would come out, and we couldn't really afford the pay-per-views for like wrestling events and stuff like that, so we'd wait for it to come out in video, and they would get them. And then the cool part about this place was, one, it was a small town, so they could remember you when you walked in, but they kept all of this old stuff through all the way to the end, all the way to when they closed in the early 2000s. They still had NES games for rental.
Awesome.
They still had all those WWF games for rental. And then they obviously had their new release section too, but it was so cool. I remember even at like the July 4th, like local parades, they would toss out movie posters. They would toss out free rental like coupons. This place was amazing.
That sounds awesome.
Town Talkies home video has, like, every time I see a rental store or anything or see a video about a rental store, I think about this place because it was heaven on earth. So that's my pick for my favorite video rental store of all time. The only sad part about it is I'm probably the only person who's going to see this video that knows anything about Town Talkies.
And it's gone forever.
Yeah, and again, like I said, getting video games from the store when they're selling them. So that's interesting that one of your relatives worked at the game store, so as gifts, you figured, hey, I could just get them from work for you. But overall, awesome stories, guys. I love hearing from everyone and their memories, so make sure you leave a comment down below of your video rental store memories. And guys, I think you know who the king of video rental stores is, coming in at number 1. Number 1! Blockbuster Video! Wow, what a difference! Of course it has to be Blockbuster. I think every town had Blockbuster all across America. There is still one Blockbuster Video that is left, and that's all the way across on the West Coast over in Oregon. But nonetheless, I still have fond memories of going to Blockbuster Video and renting video games, movies, and just browsing the selections there.
So I actually didn't used to be a video rental store kid, but ever since I was 8 or 9, I started heading out to Canada each summer, and I would spend the summer with my aunt, and she would take me over to this magical place where you could rent out any video, and it was called Blockbuster Video. Everybody knows it, but for European it was like, what is this thing? Obviously we do have video rental stores over here, but none as organized as when you would walk into one of these back in the mid-90s. So this was definitely a revelation for me. Like any movie I had seen glimpses of on TV, I could just pick out, take home that night and watch it. I rented out the Back to the Futures, the Indiana Jones movies, all of those classic movies that I still love to this day is thanks to my aunt taking me over to Blockbuster. Then when I came back to Belgium, I started heading out to Movie Max, which is just down the street over here. Unfortunately, it's not open anymore, but that's where I started digging deeper and getting more into horror movies. And yeah, by the time I got the courage to like rent out Hellraiser, because that cover is so badass looking, I was like, this is gonna be a horrific movie, and then it ended up not being so horrific. I mean, it's a little bit blood and stuff, but yeah, just the whole thrill of, you know, searching out the most gruesome cover of a horror movie, then taking it home and, you know, trying to watch it without getting scared. That is definitely one of the best memories I have about video rental stores.
Going to Blockbuster for video games, I definitely remember it was the Super Nintendo era and N64 games and PlayStation 1. But other than that, I would always get religiously for Christmas a gift card to Blockbuster Video, and Blockbuster was actually open on Christmas. So every year we would go to my aunt's for dinner, and then on the way home my mom would bring me by Blockbuster Video to spend my gift card, and usually I can get, you know, 2 of the used games that they were selling, you know, an N64 game. I think I picked up Diddy Kong Racing, and then, you know, something on the Super Nintendo, or if I wanted to rent a movie for the weekend, I'd do that as well.
Russ, what you doing? Russ, what you doing? Let's find out.
And well, that's it for this week's episode, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys missed last week's, be sure to check out that video as well. And if you're new here on the channel, consider subscribing. I put out videos weekly. As always, gamers, I'm RussLyman, and keep your world fun bit by bit. I'll see you next video. And I want to give a super shout out to all my Patreon supporters: Dan Buchanan, Joey Ellis, George Sandoval, Joseph Riviera, Nintendo, Joe Sheevy, David Apuzzo, Maynard, Brian Culpepper, TechWizX, Matthew Hannigan, Alex Kaz, Ayan Oshi, Gannon, and all my Patreon supporters. Link below if you want to join, and I'll see you later.